have the honor of having with us advisor to the Deputy Prime Minister of Mongolia, who also was once ambassador to India. We'll talk about government politics and much more. Welcome to Reason, the New Indians platform, where we get to the reason behind the issues that concern you. Welcome, Ganbold, to the New Indian platform.
Thank you, Aarti ji. New India, welcome.
Thank you. So I'm going to begin this conversation with a very commonsensical question. We don't really know much about Mongolia back home. And I want you to explain to us what is the democratic, semi-presidential form of government in Mongolia. What does it really entail? You got democracy established in 1990. And what kind of government has it been since then?
If you allow me to start a little bit far away from the democracy topic regarding our bilateral relations, which is centuries old. And we are sharing common spiritual, historic, and cultural ties. And you may find a number of people who carry on names from Sanskrit, derived from Sanskrit. And even more, there are lots of words and notions in Mongolian language derived from Sanskrit, Sansar, Sajana, and many others. And even before the independence of India in 1944, March, Delhi, India hosted the first Asian Relations Conference.
Okay, and this was before India got independence.
Yeah, and it was just intended to proclaim its independence and formulating its future policy, how to relate with fellow Asian countries. Then Mongolian delegation went Delhi. It took for them 2 months, and they met with Jawaharlal Nehru, who said that leader of the delegation, Jagural, and Pandit Nehruji also said that my name is also Jawaharlal. We are sharing the same name, etc. So there are a lot of people with Sanskrit names, and there are a lot of notions we are
yes, Mongolia and India share a very strong relationship.
And based on which our relations also established in 1955. Yeah. Soon after the diplomatic relations were formed, then Vice President of India, Dr. Radhakrishnan, also visited. And we also signed first cultural exchange agreement, which is continuing on even nowadays. And when we were working on drafting new constitution, new democratic constitution, yes, which was approved in 1992, then we invited the parliamentarians of India to give us some
That's very interesting.
advice. And not only one party, but several political parties, different spectrum of political landscape of India came, and they had extensive discussions. And they also given us certain good points, which is included in our constitution.
Can you give us examples?
For instance, human rights, political democracy, parliamentary democracy. And since then, all these principles also been adhered, and now we are going to make amendments to the number of parliament members be increased, and then constitutional, then election system could be also renewed from majoritarian to proportionate, etc. So our political democracy, like our cultural relations, have long background with India.
So with the consultations, discussions with India's parliamentary delegation, you set up a parliamentary democracy. What does it entail? What are the several branches of your democracy? How does it function? Explain it for our audience back in India.
Till 1990s, we had different system. single political party ruling everything, right from kindergarten allotment seats up to the job place or lifelong accommodation and food distribution, etc.
Yeah, because
Then,
Mongolia was
yeah,
a satellite state of the Soviet Union.
centrally planned administrative economy. And then we moved into a totally new system, market economy, political parliamentary democracy. And we also adhered human rights, freedom of press, all these things guaranteed by the new constitution. And first, we are proud that the electoral democracy has been strictly followed on time and peaceful change of guards.
Yeah.
And now we have many of them on the papers, but we have over 30 political parties, 34.
34 political parties.
Yeah, and they also represent different shade of their viewpoints, different spectrum of ideology. And some of them also claim themselves stand for the previous administrative or planned economy. Some of them also say, no, we are need to follow the liberal democracy, etc. So there are different spectrum of ideas, ideology.
Yeah, you have president at the top of the democracy, and then you have prime minister. I want to understand how is the distribution of powers done in your semi-presidential form of government, because both president and prime minister have executive powers.
Prime Minister's power is added last year, year before last, in our new amendment to the Constitution, who is also elected from the parliament as a leader of the winning party in the nationwide election, is nominated as a prime minister, who is also composed of his cabinet. And president is also head of power. He elects the judges, ambassadors, and he is also considered commander-in-chief of armed forces. But whatever decisions, decree a president made, it's a countersigned by the prime minister, because he is a head of executive government.
Yes.
And he's also clutching the string of post budget. So he is also very much responsible to the parliament to implement the law, and whatever decisions made by the parliament, prime minister is responsible organizing their implementations. So it's a semi-presidential but active parliamentary democracy.
And how was this system very different from the system that you had before 1990?
As I mentioned, we had single political parties, which is deciding everything, right from the minor daily issues up to the developmental issues, so public concern. So imagine we complete primary school, secondary school, and everything is decided by the government. You need not to worry where to work or where to live. Everything decided by the government.
So were you there part of the government before 1990? Or
Yeah.
You were?
Since 1980, I'm in the government service. So I have something to compare how it was and how it is now.
Yeah. So you think that post 1990, it's been way more beneficial and it's way more productive, efficient, and has helped Mongolia economically and socially, politically?
Yeah, politically, it's much more liberal, and each and everybody is expect the freedom of expressing their viewpoints. And economically, whatever we do, it's also, unless restricted by the law, it's permitted. However, we are learning and doing.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm also joking that we are for the first time living So we are learning.
You're learning. What about the judiciary? Where is judiciary placed? And what is the role of the legislative and the executive? How is the bureaucracy chosen?
Yeah, we have three branches of power. Executive branch is led by the Prime Minister, and legislative power is 76 members of parliament, including one speaker.
Yes.
And then we have also presidential system, and it's elected by the nationwide elections. And now it's once 6 years.
And you will have
And,
next elections next year.
No, it's next year we would have parliamentary
elections.
And whether it would be on proportional system or as previous majoritarian, it's under discussion now. And Parliament soon will make amendments to the law on elections, and likewise to the constitution. And president is also appointing judges and diplomats, head of missions, and he's a commander-in-chief of armed forces. So he is not involved in day-to-day fiscal or budgetary policy.
But what about the executive? What about the bureaucracy? How are they elected?
They are non-political parties. Once you are in a state government service, you are expected to abstain from political parties. But ministers, deputy ministers are political appointees. Likewise, in India, you have. And the civil servants.
So the civil servants come through a process of examination or something else?
In that case, we also having a very close ties with the public administrative service of Public Service Commission of India.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we are learning and we are also exchanging our experiences. So our system is more or less closer to what you have in India.
And very different from what Russia has and what China has, your two neighbors.
Yes, we are different. We are building up more civil service-based administrative system.
Since you have had the experience of the Soviet era and the post-Soviet era, tell me, how has Mongolia changed economically?
Whatever happens in this part of the world also inclined to have direct impact on Mongolia. So if there is a fluctuation of prices of raw materials on the world market, then we also affected, because we export raw materials, minerals, and mostly coal to China. In future, we also contemplate to export to India. And if its prices goes on, then we also earn much. If it's also plummeting down, then we also feeling need of extra source of income. So we are very much tied up with the world market. And one of our biggest export destination is China.
Yeah, in fact, the biggest trading partner.
And we also import most of our petroleum and lubricated products from other neighbors.
Yeah, Russia. So what are the trading routes if Mongolia is exploring possibilities of exporting more raw material to other countries? What will be the trading routes?
First one would be India. And we can provide India with very good quality coking coal and natural resources.
But the trading route
Trading route could be either through China or through Russia. And once we bring our commodities to seashore, then it would go on by sea.
Yes.
And
I suppose that would be China.
Yeah, India also imports coking coal, and we export it. And we also have minerals, which is in need of India. In demand
Indian
of
market, yes.
And not only mineral resources, we also have good source of animal husbandry-based raw materials like sheep wool
Yes.
or leather and skin of animals, which is replenished every year.
So are the governments of India and Mongolia exploring such possibilities?
Yes, indeed. The carpet makers in Varanasi also prefer to import sheep wool from Mongolia. And the tanneries in Madras, in Chennai, also eager to import leather from India, or Mongolia to India, because they need of it. They find the quality is good. And pharmaceutical industries in India is also willing to buy raw materials, the intestine and other things, which is useful to produce the surgery threads.
So these new possibilities are.
Yeah, and yes, there is geographic barriers like
Barriers, yes.
distance and logistic and transportation issues. But again, another source of opportunities, they can be produced here but jointly. And
Yeah,
they can,
manufactured
we
here.
are surrounded by big markets. And we have also economic partnership agreements with Japan, and we are also going to conclude similar agreements with Republic of Korea, and we have also very good relations with regional countries, even European Union.
So Mongolia has just 3 million people. Are you looking at bringing in labor? Are you looking at bringing in human resource from other countries like India and technology from other countries? Because you have just 3 million people and vast amount of resources and land.
Yeah, you are right. We are 3.3 million people, and we need of qualified labor or experienced engineers and IT experts. So investment, foreign direct investment gives us not only monetary inputs, but also knowledge, know-how, and good experience, practice of labor. So even nowadays, Indian engineers and technicians are working in the southern part of Mongolia to construct the oil refinery.
Yeah, India has a major oil refinery project here.
Yeah.
Which
and
is scheduled to
IT,
complete next year?
2025.
25. Okay. And with so much resource and with such possibilities of expanding your exports in the neighborhood and probably beyond, do you see Mongolia being an important power player in Asia in the next decade?
Why not? We enjoy very good relations with all the countries in the region. Even some countries isolated, but we enjoy relations, good relations. And whomever we need to trade commodities or services, only 3 hours in the region, 3 hours flight. So we are well located, and one of the shortcut route into Europe and Asia passes through Mongolia, and number of overflights also increasing. Number of turnover of freight also goes through Mongolia on rail is also increasing. So soon we will have also pipelines of natural gas from Russian Federation to China. And again, we also, as said, with collaboration of India, we also produce and going to construct the oil refinery. That would also give us another chances.
So this gas pipeline from Russia coming into Mongolia and then going to China, is that correct?
Yeah.
So China is also going to import more gas and oil from Russia.
Yeah. And you know, we also, as you mentioned, we have large, vast territory, and we also have 250 plus sunny days. Sun shines very bright.
Yes.
And it's a huge source of renewable energy, solar energy. And we also, since you are here in Mongolia in springtime, you might have noticed we have a lot of wind.
Yes.
So wind energy could be also another chance.
So
in which India is also good. So India's technology and know-how could be also be a big component here.
So with solar and wind energy, do you think you're going to reduce your dependence on non-renewable energy?
Yes.
By how much do you think?
By 2030, we will contemplate to produce 30% of our energy needs from renewable.
30%, that's big.
And we are landlocked country, but number of rivers also very ideal for hydropower.
Yeah, okay.
So we are going to increase the number of our source of energy.
So at some point, do you foresee that Mongolia would have the majority energy resources coming from within?
Yes. First, we need to supply ourselves demand, and then we also be able to export it. Yes.
Solar and wind energy?
Yes. Solar and wind energy, even hydro.
So you are going to shift from being an energy dependent country to being an energy self-reliant country.
Yes, energy is key of everything, including progress and prosperity. So we are very much trying to build up our energy independence.
Yeah. Now, with China as your neighbor, Russia as your neighbor, two biggest nuclear powers, two superpowers, and China actually inching closer to becoming the biggest superpower of the world. Do you feel that China and Mongolia's relationship, which is very cordial at the moment, it can in the future become perhaps a relationship of competition?
You know, everything depends on whom we are talking, and China is extremely big country. As you said, it could become one of the biggest economy in the world. But Mongolia, it's vibrant, but still young and smaller.
Smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah. Smaller
So,
economies can't really compete with big economies.
in that sense, there are too much disparity. But we can become a very good destination of new opportunities, new chances, because our location, you see. It's, as I said, surrounded by big markets, and we enjoy very good relations in the region with countries, regional countries and beyond. And we have also good, very richly endowed with mineral and other resources.
Let me make a very different argument in favor of smaller countries and smaller economies. If you look at Europe today, if you look at United Kingdom, if you look at France, if you look at Germany, very small economies, but very powerful economies. Do you think that Mongolia could be in that kind of a situation at some stage?
Why not? We also very have good opportunities of very well-educated people, and now we are talking about not only literacy rate but computer literacy, and our digital sector is also very vibrant, and now we are possessing the new advancement. So it could be also area of our advantage. And then we also have a good chance. Once I said shortest route passing through Mongolia, binding Europe and Asia, it could be also very good entertainment center. It could be also a very good location for data centers.
And tourist destination?
Tourist destination as well. So in order to become vibrant, we are not trying to compete, but we are to complement other countries.
So you have a north-south corridor between Russia and China. Do you envisage or envision a east-west corridor through Mongolia?
Yeah, in the ancient time, the Silk Road also passes through, and again, it's one of the shortest route. So whoever travels, they prefer to take a shortest route, and Mongolia is also one country which has a liberal visa system, and recently we announced some 90 countries to visit citizens of these countries visit Mongolia free of visa.
Yeah.
And we announced year of 23 till 2025 as a Visit Mongolia year.
Yeah.
And then whoever wishes to visit, they can apply even electronic visa. So the people holding Indian passports can visit without difficulty.
So, what are the areas where India and Mongolia have already established a very strong relationship in the last 30 years? And what are the areas where India and Mongolia can look at possibilities for future relationship?
We are interacting with India on human resource development, and students and postgraduate students also starting in India, and engineers and civil servants also improving their qualifications, going through various training courses in India. And so it's one of our area where we are very effectively working together. And then another area could be mining. Mining, right from exploration and exploitation, even the exporting and the processing could be.
So raw material goes to India and
Yeah.
it gets processed there?
From there, or it could be even processed here, and then it would also save expenses.
Okay, so you will need Indian resource, human resource.
Yeah. For instance, I said that we could export cooking coal, and it could be washed, values could be added, and then sent to India. Yes. It's only one example. And then IT could be also another area. IT and even space could be.
Yeah, what are Mongolia's space ambitions and science ambitions in science, technology, and space? Where does Mongolia stand today?
Yeah, it's a vast territory, one of the sparsely populated area. So communication and internet link, even space connectivity could be also a very promising area for us.
Okay.
And remote sensing, if we want to exploit the resources and they'll find out what we have in natural resources, then this remote sensing could be also area.
Is India and Mongolia talking about this issue?
Yes, we already concluded some agreements and the MOU. So there is also some initial efforts made by both sides.
So Mongolia, we never hear anything about Mongolia's armed forces. Mongolia has not been in any conflict since its independence, and we never hear anything about armed forces. What is the status of armed forces, and do Mongolia's armed forces collaborate with Chinese and Russian armed forces?
Yes, we do collaborate with these countries in the field of armed forces, and as well as with India. And our armed uniformed officers are already well experienced in international or UN peacekeeping operations. Per capita of number of peacekeepers, we are one of the leading countries in the UN, among the UN. So our uniformed officers also visit India and do some bilateral drilling.
How big is the armed force of Mongolia?
It's pretty reasonable within our small number of population.
Yeah, but you have Air Force as well as the territorial.
Yes, we have armed forces, and then we have National Guard kind of things, internal purpose, and we have also police forces, which is also in a pretty comparative size with armed forces.
And the training of your armed forces happens in Mongolia. And what kind of technology or technological level do your armed forces have today?
Yeah, we do send our commanding officers to other foreign countries, including India, and we have conscriptive service.
Oh, you have
And
conscripted
1 year, everyone is entitled to serve in the armed forces. And
this is after school, after college?
it's after 21 years.
Okay, after.
And then there are also options if one wants to work in the civil defense or the emergency management areas, they can also work for 1 year, and then it's considered as a serving in the armed forces. If one, because of religious and other spiritual reasons, not eager to work in the armed forces, then they can also make a payment.
Okay, they get compensated.
Yeah, maybe medical reasons or a belief or faith, one doesn't want to serve, then they can pay.
Okay. With so much conflict going on in the neighborhood, we have a war going on in Ukraine. We also hear a lot of people saying that China is going to take Taiwan. Do you feel Mongolia has a role of a peacemaker in the region? And do you think that you can, or probably are able to bring China and Taiwan closer, Ukraine and Russia closer?
RTG, fortunately, we have very good relations with both of our neighbors, and we have also no border or territorial disputes.
Yeah.
We have demarcated our border with two of our neighbors, and we recognize one China policy, and there is not that concern. So we have economic and commercial ties with Taiwan, but no political links.
And Mongolia stands by one China policy.
One China policy.
But with the war in Ukraine, do you think this is going to affect the region? Do you think it's going to have negative consequences for Asia?
Oh yeah, now world becoming flat. Whatever happens, one or another part of the world also definitely affect other countries. So we have very much concern regarding whatever happens in Ukraine. There should be principles. One cannot bully others, smaller countries. We need to respect one another's territorial and territorial integrity and border, etc. So whatever happens, that part of the world is very much causing concern to us.
Is just concern, or is it affecting Mongolia or other countries economically?
On 26 April, there was a UN General Assembly also debated one resolution recognizing Russian Federation as aggressor. So we supported that resolution.
Okay, so you were taking a very clear position on it. How is Mongolia's relationship with the United States of America?
Yeah, right from 1990s, our relations, even before 1990s, 88, we established diplomatic relations. We recognized United States. Yes.
Oh, okay, even as a part of being Soviet Union.
It's a free world, and it's also democracy. So we enjoy very good relations, close relations. Recently, a high-level State Department officials also came, and they visit. We exchange our delegations.
With the US-China Cold War happening, it's almost like a Cold War, and we also have a war going on in Europe. Do you think there will be a lot of pressure mounted on Mongolia from China, United States, Russia?
Well, I was in the Foreign Service and decades, but I haven't been witnessing that much pressure. But interests of countries definitely trying to explain themselves, trying to impose, and we also stake hold our positions.
And your position, of course, is that you're friends with both China and Russia.
Yeah,
And
we have equidistant relations with both of our neighbors, and at the same time we have concepts of third neighbors, including India,
including
other countries, and international organizations.
But if US and China get locked into a confrontation, do you think it's going to hurt Asia as a whole and Mongolia in any way?
Aarti, I cannot be involved in speculative things. Yes. You see, if certain things happens, then we will definitely formulate our positions and we take up our stand up. But I cannot say right.
Hypothetically.
This is too hypothetical and.
But so far, with even let's keep the hypothesis aside, but even as there is a crisis, a kind of tension between the US and China, it hasn't really affected Mongolia.
No, not affected. But I'm convinced that every countries, regardless of their size or locations, they need to have a position of principles.
Yes.
See, principles. So we do.
So when you say position of principles, what principles are involved here?
It's not like principles which countries had at the time of Cold War.
Yeah.
One or another.
Yeah, one
very
block or the other block.
enormous two blocks.
Yes.
But we are now free of that ideology-oriented positions, politics.
So are we saying that we really are now in a multipolar world?
Yes, indeed.
We are.
Yeah. India is becoming one of the largest in population, and its economic might is also increasing. So India has become one of the many centers in the world. Yeah.
And therefore, you don't think the world is going to get once again divided in two blocks or bipolar world. You think that multipolarity is the way ahead?
Yes. It's a reality, whether we want or not. It's a multipolar, and we have to also learn to exist and interact with multipolar world.
But it's very
previously the countries more or less pursued the mentality of Cold War, warring psychology. But now we are free from that. At least Mongolia is.
At least Mongolia is, and India is. I think there are a bunch of countries who have tried to stay in that neutral zone and who have tried to remain equidistant.
Yeah. You also mentioned that Mongolia is surrounded by nuclear powers. Yes, we are, but Mongolia announced, claimed itself free from nuclear weapons.
Yes.
So we are not allowed to transit even to station even nuclear weapons in our territory.
But that brings me to this question. Is Mongolia not exploring nuclear energy for energy purposes?
Yeah, definitely for peaceful means, peaceful purpose. We also willing to possess a new source of energy, which is ecologically clean and more effective. So who knows, after a short while, we may become use this nuclear energy as a new source of energy.
So there are lots of possibilities for Mongolia.
Indeed. Yeah, we also have good deposit of raw materials in this regard.
Uranium.
Yes.
Which you have so much that you can export also.
Yeah. if one is willing, then it can be. We have several deposits, and countries also expressing their interests to work.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one last question. Your government, you're part of the current government. Are you expecting to come back to power in the next election?
Every person in political life also expect to extend their longevity.
Yes.
But I'm just civil servant. Though I'm working with politicians,
Yes.
and I'm not giving much preference to one or another.
Okay.
And whoever has, whatever political party has a more clear-cut roadmap or platforms, they would win. They would win. And secondly, the majority part of population are young, youth.
Youth.
So whoever also stand up for the youth welfare or their economic and social interests, they might get more support. More support.
Okay, that's a
Yeah.
very important point.
Yeah. And 25 to 27 years old youth are very big portion in the
Huge,
population.
yeah.
Yes. So they will have decisive voting. And then women also become more influential.
Yes.
They are well educated. They are also very active in political life.
In this government
Yeah.
as well?
Yeah. So we have less number of, only 17% of MPs are women, but we need to increase the number.
And
That's
civil
why,
servants?
yeah, that's why in the election law amendments would increase the portion, the percentage of women candidates up to
Okay, so
30.
you're giving some reservation?
Yeah, 30% at least candidates, 30 to 40%.
Candidates.
Some political parties say no, it should be no less than 40%. And the majority of the political parties saying at least 30%, one
So there's
gender.
a consensus almost building around 30%.
Yeah, in a month or two it will be formulated. It will be agreed.
So this is happening.
So whatever political parties have a good agenda for women welfare, they may get also prevailing support.
Okay. And with women and youth, what are the social welfare programs of the government?
We have also big number of children and families. Those have a number of children also get some monetary incentives and other things. So certain people also criticizing, we are giving them very moral hazards. So we give them job opportunities, etc. So there are different opinions.
Okay.
But I think social welfare should be given to the well-focused, to vulnerable part.
Okay, economically,
Economically,
weaker sections.
yeah, and families with a number of children need to be supported. It's not easy.
So this is this government's opinion as well?
Yeah, government giving dispersing monetary support to families, to children.
Okay.
Children.
So but you have a program. You have
Yeah,
some kind of
91% of children get monetary support, cash support from the government. And why remaining 9%? Because they are considered well-to-do families, affluent.
91%. That's a huge number.
And people saying children should be treated equally. But again, the government saying we need to save money to other purposes. But 91 is still big number. Eh?
Yes, that's a big number. What about women empowerment? You said they are very active in politics, but are they also in civil services?
Yes, in civil services, particularly in the field of health and education, women are prevailing.
Okay.
In tertiary education, also number of female students also exceeding the number of male students. But in the decision-making process, the government, executive powers, the number of women ministers are not many, maybe 2, 3 out of 21 or something like that.
Okay, well, that's an election process.
At least 3 to 4 women ministers we have, and 17% of MPs also from fine sex. So we need to increase.
Well, on that positive note, I thank you for this conversation, and I wish you and your government all the best.
Thank you, Aarti ji, and New India readers and viewers, I also wish all the best.
Thank you. Dhanyavad.
धन्यवाद.